just the facts, ma'am.
Welcome to our third segment in Saving America, and we have a return guest. We have Mayra Addison, who has a fascinating background, as we've indicated, and she's going to talk with us today about energy in the United States, and this is her area of special expertise, and she's going to start by telling us a little bit about what she's been up to with regard to energy in the United States.
Thank you, David. Yes, I am a member of a group called Global Energy Mentors. We are under the umbrella of the University of St. Thomas, who is hosting us. Global Energy mentors startup companies from incubation from a very early stage, from incubation through acceleration only. We don't provide funding, but we get you ready for funding. And we just had our first success. We've been together since 2018, the end of 2018, and we had our first mentee graduate and get Series A funding. It was acquired by another company. It was the company is called Troposphere, and it was the woman who started it is a woman scientist. So in the month of the women, we should congratulate her especially. So, and we mentor everything in energy. It can be anything that is related to the energy industry. We have mentees that purify water that come out of an oil well, and we have mentees who are designing an algorithm on the cloud to optimize the design of microgrids. So it's the whole spectrum.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that's wonderful. Well, you have the right background to talk a little bit about the Biden energy policy, and of course, you're very aware of some of the big changes that have taken place with the Keystone Pipeline being yo-yoed back and forth between the Obama, Trump, and Biden administrations, and also the impact on gasoline prices. So tell us a little bit about that.
The Biden administration and the Obama administration have declared a war on hydrocarbons. It's part of a world movement to demonize hydrocarbons because they they call CO2 equivalents. It's not just CO2 that comes from a combustion, but all CO2 equivalents that come from, for example, coal or other emissions, even hexafluorocarbons too, that are being used in the wind industry, for example. But we have simplify the problem to hydrocarbons come from the oil, and therefore the oil is bad. I keep telling my students when I teach a class in energy, and as part of the class, they have to pick a developing country, and they develop the electricity system for that country. I keep telling my students to use common sense and to first, before they say what kind of sources they're going to use for that country, to look at the indigenous resources for that country. That's common sense. That is sustainable. Renewable doesn't mean sustainable. Renewable is just that, renewable. We're not using anything that we're extracting from the subsoil and not putting it back. So renewable is hydro, renewable is geothermal, renewable is marine waves, renewable is wind, and renewable is solar too. So, but that doesn't mean that it's sustainable for a country. What is sustainable for a country is to use their indigenous resources. In the United States, we have plenty of gas and oil. Gas is one of the cleanest way to generate in a thermal way other than nuclear. When we declare the war on what is indigenous to us, we are getting in a whole lot of trouble. I don't need to explain that closing down the gas pipeline, the XL pipeline, is a mistake. We can see what happened with the Obama. We saw what happened with Trump when he opened up the construction of the pipeline. And we're seeing what's happening when Biden closed the construction of the pipeline. We are becoming less dependent, less independent in energy. The oil prices are going up, which means that countries that have dictatorships like Venezuela are cheering for that at this point, because they could not compete with their oil prices so low, their economies that were so dependent on oil, although these tyrants around the world are now are saying thank you, Mr. Biden, that the price of oil is going up. So then we think that we're saving the environment by closing the XL pipeline. Well, that gas and that oil needs to be transported. And now that we cannot transport it in the pipeline, now we need trucks and railroads to transport it, creating a higher carbon footprint for the transportation of that oil, which is clearly not sustainable, and clearly not good to the environment, and clearly not good for jobs in America, and clearly not good for a geopolitical position of the United States, because now countries like Venezuela are going to become stronger thanks to Biden policy.
Yeah, this is a pretty fascinating, geopolitical situation, I think they call it. And you're giving a gift to people who are not American taxpayers. And the false narrative of the Democratic Party has often been, oh, we're the party of the poor and minorities. And yet, you and I, being in the middle class, basically, I mean, it's fun to pay $1.75 for gasoline, but it's $2.75 roughly on the United States market today. And that is not going to keep us from making a mortgage payment or a rent payment. But there are many, many people who supposedly are being supported by the Democratic Party or supporting the party, who $1 a gallon change in a gallon of gasoline makes an enormous difference. Not everybody can take public transportation to work, and public transportation is not free, and the cost of those transportation vehicles is based on the cost also. So what have we seen with that? Do you see any turnaround?
It's you were talking about inflation. Transporting goods at a higher price causes inflation. I mean, transporting a gallon of milk now is going to be more expensive. And like you said, the ones that are going to be affected is the poorest and our children, because our children will end up paying for this inflation. Just going outside the United States, these implications that Biden is the policies from Biden have implications all over the world. It's not just in the United States. Our country has a GDP high enough that can buffer the increase in gasoline for the economy of a family. Other countries are highly dependent on oil for their energy sources. And those are developing countries where the GDP cannot buffer that. And those are countries that are highly dependent not on a service economy, but an agribusiness economy that needs the oil to transport their goods outside the agribusiness. So the poorest of the poorest are going to be suffering from an increase in oil prices all over the world. We still need oil to develop. We still need oil for the poor. Solar panels and windmills are really nice, but they don't solve the problem. They are intermittent. They can only provide no more than 20% of the energy, and they have a lot of side effects. They are not carbon neutral. They are highly pollutant because they are an intermittent source. We have seen a high increase in equipment that buffers the intermittence, and that equipment works with hexafluorocarbons. We have seen a huge increase of hexafluorocarbons in the atmosphere. 1 ton of hexafluorocarbons is like 25,000 tons of CO2 in the Kyoto equivalent. So we have to be careful what we use. It's okay for Europe to use wind because they don't have gas. They have to import it from Russia. It's okay for China to have windmills because they don't have oil, but they use coal, which is 10 times more polluting than gas. So we have gas. We can have cheap energy for our industries. We can have cheap energy for our households. Why not? Why not make that our source while we have it and it's sustainable?
Well, I really appreciate your comments today, and it's been delightful to have you back on Saving America. And I hope you'll consider coming back again. And this has been Mayra Addison, and she has a great background, as you heard, and we're so happy to have her back on Saving America.